If you've been watching this thing that I do for very long, you will know that I have a deep and abiding love for film masters. Not the master tapes used in making films and not the people who are really good at making films, but the Blu-ray company Film Masters has set about releasing neglected films and doing like best editions ever. Initially, it was just films that had commonly been released as public domain titles and doing the definitive editions of those, but now they're licensing titles from other places, including the Something Weird Library and AGFA, which is just two entities that I love that were always dedicated to representing outsider cinema and cult movies and orphan films and oddball flicks. And here we have a release of two films I'd never seen. I think I'd heard the titles, but I'd never seen before. Common Law Wife and JENNIE Wife Child. Now, before you stop watching this, they're not what they sound like, but boy, are these fun exploitation movies from the golden age of exploitation, from early, well, it's early and late 60s, from the 60s, let's say, both in black and white and given just beautiful transfers here. I'm going to upfront tell you these things look phenomenal, and the stories behind the movies are arguably more interesting than the movies themselves, but the movies themselves are fun. So we're going to go one at a time. It's on 2 discs, which I love, so they're not all crammed on 1 disc and suffering any kind of quality. Disc 1, as I think of it, is Common Law Wife from 1961. 74 minutes, black and white, 178, so it fills your widescreen TV. Directed by, here's the fun part, Larry Buchanan and Eric Sayers. Larry Buchanan was uncredited on this. The backstory to this movie is that I get tongue-tied when I talk about how much I love film masters. The backstory here is that Larry Buchanan made a movie on 16 millimeter in color that didn't get released. And the distributor or the film company said, we can do something with this. They brought in Eric Sayers and had him shoot a film on black and white, 35 millimeter, to basically retool the whole story. So as you're watching this, anytime the film looks kind of fuzzy and grainy, that is the original Larry Buchanan footage, and anything that looks really sharp and great is the Eric Sayers footage. It stars Annabelle Weenick, George Edgley, and Lacey Kelly, and a bunch of other people you've never heard of. So the basic story is that there's this old man, and he's, I guess, a rich old man somewhere in the South. He has a live-in common law wife who is getting too old for him, and he decides he's going to call up his niece, and she'll take care of him. Yeah. The niece is portrayed by 2 different actresses, clearly 2 different actresses as you watch. One was in a different actress. Lacey Kelly was the original actress in the Larry Buchanan film, and I don't have the name here. Maybe it's Annabelle Weenick who is in the new footage. So it goes back and forth with the woman who's been this old man's companion for all these years and is being cast aside because she's too old, goes to a lawyer, find out she is his titular common law wife, and then if he wants to get rid of her, he has to divorce her, and she gets a big old slice of the pie there. And the niece who's coming in, who's trying to get a slice of the financial pie and cuddle up to old creepy uncle in order to get his riches. And there's all kinds of melodramatic goings on with all kinds of relationships between the various women. And I mean, it's not explicit in any way. It's just these various women have dalliances with a man they actually want to be with while they are leading on this uncle guy and trying to get him to pony up the dough when he kicks off. So it's Southern Gothic, it's small town intrigue, it's melodrama, it's sleaze, it's exploitation. There's a little bit of nudity. I think there's a little bit of bear behind and a little bit of side action here, but it's really not a salacious, in terms of explicit visuals, film. It's just more salacious in tone, and it really is more like a baby doll kind of movie, like those movies that were big, Lolita, Baby Doll, that kind of stuff that was being made back then. Both of these movies on this set are, but they don't really go very far in that direction, other than, you know, the old man being a creep, but it's not really an explicit creep. So presented in audio, DTS HD Master Audio 2.0 Mono or Dolby Digital 2.0 Mono, English SDH subtitles, and subtitles for the commentary, which is cool that they do this for. So like if you wanted to, I don't know what, listen to the radio while reading your commentary, you could do that. Or if you have hard of hearing, that's what the SDH stuff is for. That's really cool that they do that, because commentary subtitles are really not common anywhere in the industry unless it's non-English speaking director or actor or something like that. So there is a disclaimer at the beginning that I will recite to you here. This movie was originally shot in color, 16 millimeter as Swamp Rose by Larry Buchanan, later sold to a distributor who hired Eric Sayers to shoot additional footage in 35 millimeter to create Common Law Wife. Film Masters says there may be some noticeable changes in the film grade due to this, and there is, but to me that's interesting. It's a little distracting, but it's interesting because that clearly tells you, okay, this was what originally was shot and this was the extra stuff. And also very clear is that it's a different actress being called a certain name. So as I said, it's interesting. It's a total hoot. Even at 74 minutes, there's a bit of padding here and there, but it's old-time schlocky fun, and boy, does it have a corker of an ending. Whatever you think of this movie, if you're fans of Something Weird Video, this was released previously by Something Weird. If you're fans of Something Weird, this is the definitive edition, and if you like that kind of movie and you never saw it before, this is the film for you. A lot of the dialogue is dubbed, and it gives it a weird, like Doris Wishman kind of feeling, like this weird, dreamy, otherworldly feel, because everybody's clearly speaking English, but it's just all post-dubbed. Bonus features: you get a new commentary by Millie DeCherico from formerly of TCM, and Ben Cheeves, who also was a TCM programmer. It starts strong, but it devolves into really long gaps, and then a lot of it's just watching and making observational things. Like, it starts off with a lot of cool information and they're very engaged, but after a while, they're just kind of watching it along with you. And for me, commentary needs to be, I don't want gaps in a commentary. It's like, I've already just watched the movie. I don't need to watch it again. I'm here to glean some information or insight. So that was a bummer. That would have maybe been better as what they used to call a select scene commentary. There's an archival commentary with Larry Buchanan and Nathaniel Thompson from the old Something Weird disc, where he makes reference to Mike Vraney, who ran Something Weird. It's really cool. It breaks down what Buchanan did versus what the other director did and didn't shoot. He talks about his career and his technique. What's really interesting to me is that Larry Buchanan doesn't seem to have like a grudge against the fact that his original movie was manipulated into being something else. Like, he even says, well, I can see why they did that. And that was a more commercial choice. And they were just trying to do this. But he kept saying how gorgeous the 16 millimeter color footage would have been if anybody could see it. And he talks, if you were the kind of person to do a drinking game sort of thing, the amount of times he says the word Lacey about his original actress in the movie and says how amazing she was and how sexy she was and how pretty she was. And this isn't Lacey. Oh, that's Lacey. You would kill yourself if you were drinking that much. It's insane how often he does that. If you want to have fun, just listen to the commentary, just take a little pen and paper, get a giant jar of jelly beans, take one out every time he says Lacey, and then count up how many you have and let me know, because that would be really interesting. There's also the restored 1963 trailer for the film, which looks perfect. Disc 2 is Jenny Wife/Child, Jenny Wife Child from 1968, a.k.a. Albert Peckinpah's Revenge, which they kept saying the name of character in this, Albert Peckinpah, and I'm like, that seems familiar. I feel like I've seen that on an album cover somewhere, and I looked it up, and the original title of the film was, I think, something else, Wild Wood or something like that, Wild Weed, Wild Reeds. Then it was titled Albert Peckinpah's Revenge, and later retitled as Jenny Wife Child, to again try to capitalize on that whole exploitation, baby doll, whatever, making you think this film is far more salacious than it is, because it really isn't very salacious. The wife-child thing is just the fact that this young woman, I think she said she's 20 or early 20s, and the character in the film is married to a much older guy who's probably in his late 40s into his 50s or something like that. And it's the southern rural gothic melodrama. It could have been, it's along the lines of like stuff that Russ Meyer was doing with his rural melodramas, where he did like Mudhoney and stuff like that, where it's young woman with young womanly desires, old man, she doesn't like him, young farmhand, young buck farmhand, she's interested in the farmhand is really dubious because he's, an employee and he doesn't want to get, shotgunned by the old man, and all the intertwinings and all that kind of stuff. So 82 minutes, black and white. Again, more or less 178 fills your screen. Directed by Robert Carl Cohen and James Landis, because again, it was a movie that was shot, and as Millie DeCherico reveals in the commentary, it was shot as a straight drama and ran about 2 hours. And the distributor was like, ain't nobody gonna come see this movie, black and white in 1968, that runs 2 hours and is dead serious. So the other director came in, or editor came in, to, I don't know that they really shot any new scenes, but they added all these like silent movie style intertitles that were very wry and humorous and campy, and put a lot of silly music in it and shaved the movie way down. And I'm sure it plays a lot better than it would have in its original form, especially for the intended audience. I think they looked at it and they were like, this is not commercial in much of any way. It's so funny, it's 1968. Most of the time I'm watching it, I'm like, this feels like 62 or 63, 65 at the most. But then you see our young farmhand has very late 60s sideburns, and they go to like a dance club, and you're like, okay, this is the later 60s. But overall, it feels like a much earlier film than it is. Presented in, again, DTS HD Master Audio 2.0 mono, Dolby Digital 2.0 mono, English SDH subtitles, and subtitles for the commentary. I'm watching the movie and I'm like, wow, this looks really good. Like, this is surprisingly well shot. This is better shot than it needed to be for what it is. It's because it was shot by Vilmos Zsigmond, of course, who did a lot of work in exploitation, low-end, low-budget movies before becoming one of the iconic cinematographers of the 60s and 70s. Bonus features. Oh, it's a very sharp transfer too, by the way. Both of these, they look really, really good. There's brief nudity in the film, brief female buttocks, but the whole overall, the movie is very innocuous. It's just, and it's a better made movie than you would expect for this. So the extras are a commentary, as I said, by Millie Chirico. Some really good info. She's great. I hope she shows up on more of these. She's a really good get for Film Masters for these. But again, there are incredibly long gaps where she doesn't say anything, and I'm just listening to the dialogue of a movie that I just watched that I may or may not have even loved, but sometimes the commentaries redeem the value of some of these movies. And that's where she reveals about the background to these movies. There is a documentary called That's Hicksploitation from Ballyhoo Motion Pictures that sort of stars or is hosted by C. Courtney Joyner. It's 50 minutes. It's really good. It gets into the whole history of what they call hicksploitation, these rural melodramas, these rural exploitation films that starts, moonshiners and hillbillies and backwoods lovin' and all that kind of stuff. So that's really good. It takes these films, puts context for the films that you have on this set, but also talks about what came before and after. So that's excellent. And then you get a new 2024 trailer that's 2 minutes long for JENNIE, Wife, Child. It feels authentic to the film. It's newly created, but it feels like it could have been done back then. You just can kind of tell that it's a super sharp transfer, and any of the wipes or the visual effects that would have been opticals in the old days are digital, and any of the titles look they look like video titles as opposed to inherent in the film grain for what's the titles are sitting on top of. So another excellent release from Film Masters. I'll show you the box here, possibly out of focus, but there's the box. And we open it up and we've got a hefty booklet with writing on the film, one film per disc. Booklet contains essay by Lisa Petrucci of Something Weird Home Video, Something Weird Video, who knows these films intimately. It's called Backwoods Babes, Mean Old Men, and Simple-Minded Studs. That's about the two films. And then it's got a lot of stills from the new transfers. So excellent release from Film Masters. I love what they're doing. It literally just keeps getting better from them. Common Law Wife and JENNIE, Wife, Child.